Guys, thank you so much for joining me today on the Being a Dad podcast. Today, I have an outstanding man that I know. I think we're going 11 years now. Joe Meglio, good friend of mine. I used to work for him too. He runs a super successful franchise, GameChanger Fitness in New Jersey, as well as one in Maryland. Joe, dude, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, Andres, good to catch up with you, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you got it, man. I really admire you. In a lot of ways, I know you became, a dad in the last couple of years, and you just had your daughter recently. And you're a man I've admired in so many different ways, and I'm really glad to have you here, man. And just for everyone to know, how many kids do you have, and what are the names?
Yeah, I have two kids. Anthony, he's a little over 2 years old, about 2.5 now, actually. And our daughter, Ava, she was born 10/11, 2021. So she's going to be 5 months in a couple of days.
Wow. And what would you say is your proudest moment so far as a dad?
Yeah, I mean, I think the moment they come out is, is pretty game changing for anyone who's, had that experience. They know exactly what I'm talking about, but there's nothing like that. So, I mean, that's definitely the highlight, the best moment. But the most proud, I don't know, just watching them every day, grow and develop. It's really cool seeing that. There's a lot of development that happens early on in life, and being able to see that every day is really cool.
Dude, that was the bluntest answer. Yeah, when they came out. Total gym guy over here. But I'm guessing you know, what's been your proudest moment so far as a dad?
Um, Yeah, well, just circling back to what we just said, I guess I think of my son and really just watching them grow and learn, to do things that they're going to do, whether that's walking, learning to talk, just seeing them progress is really cool, and it certainly makes me proud. I would say that for sure.
And you know, so people don't know you, like you've been an entrepreneur for a number of years. You have a number of different gyms. We had COVID happen. Like again, you opened another location during that time. On top of that, and being a dad, and let's not even include the obvious stuff of like just the sleep stuff. What would you say is the biggest challenge so far as a dad?
Yeah. So what's interesting, before I had kids, it was very hard not to be working all the time. 24/7, always thought about the business and what have you. And I was actually didn't know what was going to happen when I had kids. I thought that was going to be a real big struggle, being, that balance, or whatever you want to call it, between, operating my businesses and wearing the entrepreneurial hat, and then, being present with my kids. But I would say really to my surprise, it's actually given me a lot of balance where it's easier to shut down work now than ever before, where I really thought that was going to be a challenge. And not to say that it's not challenging at times, but I would say that has been smoother than I originally thought it was going to be. By nature, I'm just hardwired to want to work. I'm passionate about it. I love to do it, so it's hard not to do it. But I
Yeah.
would say, but having my kids definitely put that more in perspective, where I really created more boundaries, and protected the time. Right, as I think about that, I always say to myself, like, man, I don't think I'm ever going to go to my grave saying, you know what, I wish I would have worked harder. But I think something that I do want to make sure of is I never say, oh, I wish I would have spent more time in the morning, more time in
Mm,
the evening, or on the weekends, or whatever. So I really do protect that time. Again, it's somewhat, it can be challenging as you're, driven to want to always do better, and take your business to the next level. But yeah, I guess that transition was a little bit smoother than I thought it was, but still is a challenge nonetheless.
now, you mentioned a big thing, like protecting your time. And just for the other men out there who are running their own business or maybe even starting their own business and they haven't found that balance, and it's kind of like, hey, like it's the justification, like, hey, I'm putting food on the table. This is what I got to do, or this is my dream. Like, this is what I got to do. What would you say are the strategies or the things that you did to help protect that time, to help create that balance in your life?
Yeah, I think one of the things is really changing my expectations. Like before I had kids, I was very regimented in the morning with my morning routine, and what I did. That was generally the time that I did a lot of reading and what now. But now that's not my expectation, right? I wake up. I know my son's going to be up shortly after I'm up, and then we're just hanging out in the morning together, right? So had I not changed my expectation, if I still and I've run into this, right? If I didn't, and if I expect to do certain things and they don't get done, that can get frustrating, right? Because now I'm trying to accomplish multiple things, and I've been there, but I've learned from that. So I think changing my expectations was definitely part of it, and really making sure whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to be doing that thing, right? If I'm working, I'm going to be working. Probably best I do that out of the house, right? So I'm not distracted. If I'm going to be present with my kids, I'm going to be present with my kids. And that's the biggest thing for me, is creating those boundaries, where I keep that stuff separated as much as possible from a time perspective, right? So for me, I'm doing, I know that early morning time is going to be really for the family, and I'm okay with starting my day later than I normally would have. In the past, I'd be starting my day super early, right, in terms of work schedule, but now that waits till like mid morning. And same thing with closing out the day. I'm okay with being home by 5 o'clock now, right, and shutting down from work and not bringing that home. Whereas before that wasn't really the case, right? So yeah, I think that's really it. Is just creating boundaries on time and committing to those boundaries, and knowing maybe what are some of the things that I know are triggers, right, where I need to avoid. That certainly has helped for sure.
Was there ever a time where someone or something tested or like kind of try to push against that boundary? And if so,
Oh
what did
yeah.
you do?
Yeah. I mean, it was a challenge during COVID when things were shut down and I had to work from home, so you're balancing that. And then, at the time I only had my son, would want to play or do whatever. So yeah, I mean, that definitely has been challenged. And I just know that if so like now, the world's open back up. If I still did that now, right, work from home,
Mhm.
I can't expect that he's not going to want to, talk or whatever, right? So I would say that that's really it, just setting my environment up for success, right? So if I know I'm wearing whatever hat I'm wearing, I got to be in the right environment to be effective in that. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing for me.
Nice, man. And if you were to go back in time, what would you do the same?
What would I do? I had the perspective of, I will never regret spending too much time with my family or my kids. That I would protect that. I would do that the same. I would never look back and say I should have worked harder. I think that's how I'm hardwired.
Mm.
I'm going to do that by nature. So making sure that I would go back and really protect the time I do have with my kids. Just realizing what's important to me and making sure that if I say it's a priority, that I actually make it a priority. So
Mm.
I wouldn't change that. I would go back and do that again for sure.
What would you do differently?
I knew that question was coming. I would say what I would do differently is learning how, and again, I talked about now, I think it's been pretty effective of how I separated it, but it wasn't really always that way, where I would try to bring work home at times, and I would try to,
Mhm.
be present with my kids while trying to, do some work. That never works out. Right. And I would find myself getting frustrated because I had competing demands, and I
Mhm.
couldn't accomplish what I was doing. So I do well when I can stay focused on one thing at a time. And so for me, that's what I would do differently. And I learned from it. I learned from that early on, and it's been a much clearer to me that that's the best way for me to operate.
And I'm in the unique position where I've gotten to meet your family multiple times, and you come from a very like incredibly value driven, like everyone's just so kind and everyone's so awesome. And it's just I'm curious, what are you bringing into your style of parenting style as dad that you picked up from your parents, from your grandparents, like people you grew up with?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a lot. I think one of the first things that come to mind is obviously the values, around integrity, hard work, being family oriented, those types of ideals or attributes for sure. Being humble. So those are the first things that come to mind. But yeah, there's really, I guess, a series of values which were mentioned, which values to me are just a series of behaviors. It's really how you carry yourself. So those are the things that come to mind that I do think are important to pass on. The idea that whatever you get, it's because you work for it in life. It's not going to be handed to you. So
Mhm.
those are some of the things that come to mind when I think about how I was raised, my family, and what I do want to pass on to my kids.
And what do you feel is something that the way that you grew up, you're doing it differently with your kids?
It's a good question. I mean, they're so young, so I don't know. Some of those decisions really haven't been made yet, I guess. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know. What are we doing differently? I don't remember myself as a 2-year-old, so I don't know what I've been doing differently so far. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's something that I guess I'll see as we continue to raise our kids, and I'll have more time to reflect on that. But yeah, right now I don't know. I'm not too sure what I will be doing differently. It's something that I guess to be determined.
Yeah, and I think the unique position too that I'm seeing is like there's just such a like, dude, my parents did it right. Like I'm doing it. I don't think I need to deviate too much. But the cool thing there, I'm curious too, is you started business again. You guys, you and Christina were not even engaged yet. You guys
Yeah,
were still going
right.
out, and this whole journey now, 11 years later, at least from the time that I've known you, like you started the business 2012, 13, right?
2013. Yeah, eight and a half years
2013.
ago.
Yeah. So we're almost coming up on a 10-year
Yeah,
anniversary too
yeah, yeah.
soon. With that said, there are guys who have families already and who are running businesses. What would you like? What is some advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I think just realizing what's important to you. I talk to a lot of business owners, and their hours are just absolutely crazy. So I think you just got to realize what's important to you, and do the best you can with what you have. I guess I'm fortunate that I do have flexibility with my schedule to align it in a way where it is ideal for me. So I guess my advice would be to find the right balance for you, realizing that everyone's different. What works for me may not work for someone else, but if it's important to you, you have to prioritize it, and you have to do everything within your control to protect that time, or to make that time, or to create that time, or just to make the most of that time if it's not exactly what you'd want it to be. But I think that's the
Mm.
biggest thing, and to really, regardless of the amount of time, just really be present in that time, and truly live in it and enjoy it. Everyone tells you that when you have kids, they grow up fast in the blink of an eye, and it's very true. It's incredible how fast it does go, and how quickly they develop, and it's pretty cool to see how their personalities come out. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be my advice: is really figure out what's important to you, and when that, structure your life around that. Structure your business around that. I think a common saying is there's really no work life balance. It's really about work life integration, and I do think that is true. And you do want to integrate things in a way that makes sense for you. That is going to make you live it to the fullest, and to be able to do what you want with it. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, and there's something that I've learned from you is just like you're one of the most resourceful men that I know. Tony Robbins says it's not a lack of resources for why we didn't get something. It's usually a lack of resourcefulness. And you're an entrepreneur. You're the one. You've. I remember when you were leading the team. Like just I'm kind of looking forward towards a big. I don't know how you put it, but like you were kind of looking forward to something like the pandemic happening with regard to your business, and
Yeah.
it's like you wanted something to rock the boat, see the test of the business, and it's like I want to see what test our metal here. And with that, even what you're saying is like we make the time, we create the balance, we create the life that we want to have around all this stuff. There are a lot of men listening to this who's like, I don't think I can do it. I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have the money. And I think something that I'd be happy to share from knowing Joe is find a way, because you know your reason why. And I'm curious, what are some resources that you recommend? Because again, I know you're a man who likes to educate and prepare himself. What did you do, or what are resources that you learned to be a better dad, or parenting, or anything for someone who's kind of in the middle of this, as in a unique position as an entrepreneur and just starting off their family?
Yeah, well, I think part of it came somewhat, I wouldn't say natural, but prepared me for it was the fact that, what I did for a living is I trained kids, I coached athletes. I was an athlete. So I think that was always, I wouldn't call it similar, but I always had to be a role model for, the younger generation. I'll say it like that. So I was exposed to that, early on. And I think that helped with the transition, right? Where I wasn't always just responsible for myself. I was responsible to other, younger generation of people that I was trying to mold. So I think being, a father is similar in that regard. Of course, there are differences, right? But I think just from a big picture, that's something that, prepared me for that. And I also think though, like there's never going to be a perfect time, you're never going to have all the answers. You're not going to have all, how to do things, but, you do want to be resourceful. And a lot of times, whether that's in business or in personal life, that's knowing who to ask the right questions to, or knowing the right questions to ask, right? And knowing that you don't have all the answers, and knowing that it's okay to ask questions, right? And to, so I think that's important. If you think you have all the answers, that's really where you probably get stuck, because you think you know everything. But if you're not afraid to ask questions, if you're not afraid to see where you maybe need to fill in some gaps, I think that's why I am super social, because I know that I don't have all the answers, and I know that I need help to become the best that I could be.
Dude, love that. And, for the dads out there who are running a business and maybe they've run it for a few years and maybe a couple decades, like what advice do you have for them with regard to being a dad?
Yeah, I think that's really what I hit upon before, unless it's a different question. But I think that would be the advice is, you obviously have goals that you have for your business, and you have probably goals for your family, or things that you want to accomplish. I would say, you want to make sure that they can live in the same universe, right? And that you could hopefully accomplish both those things. And for some reason you can't, if the goals are so polar opposite and they can't, live in the same planet, then then you have to really do some soul searching and see what's important to you. And I don't think there's a right answer to that, but you do want to figure out really what you need to do if that's the situation that you're in. But yeah, that would be my advice. If you are a business owner and you are a parent, it would be to find that integration and find out what makes sense to you, and what's important to you. Like, so for example, if it's important to you to be at your kids' games and their events, then you need to build that into your schedule, right? It's hard to want to, and if that's truly important to you, then you block that out like it's a business meeting or what have you. If it's that important, if you're hopefully your business allows you to do that, and if it doesn't, then I'm probably not the right person to ask, because my business allows me to do that, right? Because I protect it so much. So I think that's what it really comes down to, is you got to really know what you value, what's important to you, and then really, I think the thing with business is your business is designed to serve, you and obviously your customers, or whatever your business is, but you want to design it with intention, and I think that's important. It's so easy to get lost in in the day-to-day in business, and just wanting to grow and for the sake of growing. But that's really where lifestyle design, to me, is probably a very important factor in that business planning. And it certainly was for me, so I would say that might be something that you want to consider as you're trying to, do both, right? You're trying to be a great parent, and you're trying to, run a great business, is find where that balance is for you, and what changes need to happen in order for you to accomplish both those things. And really, there's time isn't everything, meaning, like, again, it could be the quality of time, right? So maybe you don't have as much time, but what are you doing with that time that you do have? I think that's really, really important.
And for a dad who's looking to create a business and maybe just create this balance for himself instead of relying on someone else's schedule, what would you say what are some resources that you recommend that he check out?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great business resources. The E-Myth is a classic book that a lot of entrepreneurs will recommend. That's a huge resource. Another great book, Traction, by Gino Wickman. Another great resource. That's something that I've implemented in my business. So I think if you are interested in getting into business, those are two great resources. And I think that's the other thing though too, right? When you're early stages in creating, in your business, it's not you're not going to it's hard to get that balance, right? I think there's a stage that you need to go through in your business to get it to the point where you can create the lifestyle that you want. But it could take, it's going to probably take for most of us years to accomplish that, right? And depending on the nature of your business, it may take longer than that. So you have to know really what you're in for, if you're going to go down that road.
Mm. And just on the flip side, back to your kids, like what is something you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I definitely am looking forward to getting them involved with sports. I
Yeah.
think sports is such a great character builder. I think it teaches you a lot about life. So I'm definitely really interested in getting them engaged with sports, assuming that that's something that they want to do, right? Or if they're not into that,
Mhm.
whatever they are into. But yeah, that's something I'm really looking forward to, seeing how their personalities develop, and really not forcing anything upon them, right? Not like I was a baseball player. I'd love for my son to play baseball, but I'm not going to force, not going to force them to play baseball, right? So seeing how they develop, I'm really looking forward to that and seeing what they take interest in, and what have you. That's something that's going to be really cool, as they get older and they grow up.
Nice. And I know you're in a unique position where you love sports, and I'm curious, like, for the dad who maybe, because again, you've coached athletes for a long time now, so you've seen this too. What is some advice that you have for a dads who are like, how would you like supporting their kids when they're in sports? Because you and I both know a lot of kids, like they feel the pressure, they feel the judgment, they have like crazy dad over here just creating a
Totally.
ruckus.
Well, and going back to one of your previous questions, I think for me that was very eye-opening. When I was in my 20s and I would deal with these parents and just seeing kind of how they, I don't know, reacted, or their mindset when it came, they were almost living vicariously through their kid. I knew that was not something that I ever wanted to do, because I saw how that was portrayed, right,
Mhm.
externally, and I was like, wow, that's not something that I don't aspire to be like that. So yeah, I think that's it. I think it's letting your kids at a young age try a lot of different activities, in sports, and just really supporting whatever they're into, and I think the more you expose them to, the better. I don't think you want to pigeonhole them into only one activity and, do it year round, or do it all, do that all the time. I think the more, activities, or, I don't know if that's the right word, but the more exposure they have, the more they could explore and really see what they gravitate towards. I think that's important, because I think one of the benefits of training athletes was seeing, meeting their parents, and you get a good sense of, some of those parents who you'd like to be like, and the ones that you definitely did not want to be like. And you could see them, their kids too, right? You could see,
Yeah.
certain parents who behaved a certain way, and you would see that, their kids behave similarly, right? Or other parents, who were, behaved a certain way, and their kids, unfortunately, took after mom or dad in that regard. So I think for me that was a bit eye-opening, and that was a great experience for me to see that, firsthand, as I dealt with a lot of parents, in my early years growing my business.
Mm. Yeah, that's kind of alarming, or not alarming, but just so crazy to see. Like, yeah, like kind of know why you are the way you are. Seeing your parents.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, sometimes, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
And what would you say is, a great fear that you have as a dad?
Uh, I would say I would say missing out, right? That's certainly a fear, is not putting my kids first, and for them not creating an environment where they could be real, with me, and being disconnected. I think those are definitely things that, I certainly want to make sure never happen. As a dad, I want to make sure that I'm always present, that they know that they can come to me for anything that they need. They're not afraid to tell me the truth.
Hmm.
And just being there. I think that being the support that they need, and the guide, and giving them the guidance that they need in life. So I think those are the things that I think about.
And there's something super in like, thanks for, saying what you said, because it reminded me of something you said earlier with like, for the business owner dad, like, look, make the time that you have, but if you don't have that much, like if you haven't created that time yet, make sure that time that you do have is quality time. And I'm curious, was that true for you in any sense of the way? I know, your parents worked very hard, and I know you also, something tells me you also did travel ball. Like, what did you have a sense of, like, not enough like maybe you were strapped for time with your dad, but every time that you did have, it was super quality time?
Not necessarily. I think that my parents didn't travel for work a whole lot, so I certainly had a lot of FaceTime with them.
Okay.
So I don't think that was an issue per se. But yeah, I just think that's just a reality, right? If time is your biggest objection, right, because of work circumstances, then you really need to make the time that you do have count. And I think a lot of that has to do with like just things I've learned over the years. And you see, kind of how people can get lost for hours on social media, but they're sitting next to their loved one or their kids, and they're just like, everyone is in their own world, right? You see that, you go out to eat and you could look up and you'll see, unfortunately half the table is probably like that, right? So I
Mhm.
just think that's more of a product of of today's society, where it's so easy to get distracted and to not be present. And we see that with kids that we've trained too, right? Where it's harder to hold their attention and what have you. So I'd say that's more a product of just knowing, what life can throw at you, and today's society.
Mm. For the new dad around the block, maybe he's
Mhm.
expecting, or maybe he's a couple weeks, maybe even months in. What is some advice that you have for him?
Yeah. I think the cliches that you hear, that it really does go by fast. That's true. The first couple months, your baby can't. They need you. They can't do anything without you, right? And then I don't know, 4 to 7 months. My timelines may be off here. They may start crawling, and then they get whatever. Whenever they start walking, that's you start keeping up with them, right? So
Mhm.
I think the advice is just, it's okay not to have all the answers. You just do the best you can. And, there's hopefully you have people around you that you can call on for help when you need it. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be my advice is, I don't think you're ever going to fully feel ready by any means. And if you do, I think that's awesome. But yeah, you just do the best that you can. You do the best that you can, and it's, if you know what you believe in and you know what's important to you, I think that's what you want to pass on and instill in your kids.
And this question is not for me. This question isn't for any dad in specific, but what is something that you want to tell Anthony and Ava right now?
Oh, that I love them. That's something that you always want them to know, and to never forget that. And to especially as they get older, and life gets more complicated, or more challenging, I should say, or obstacles get thrown their way. And I'm sure there's going to be times where we will make decisions that are unpopular with them, but that are in their best interest. I always want them to know that for sure.
Love it. Joe, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, man. And I love seeing you again.
Awesome, Andres. Thanks so much for having me.
You got it, brother.